At exactly 3:17 a.m., London went completely silent as every digital system in the city suddenly shut down. Lights vanished across Canary Wharf in Westminster. Trains froze in tunnels, phones died mid-call, and the skyline fell into medieval darkness, yet old mechanical clocks continued ticking as if nothing had happened. Ethan Hale, an ordinary National Grid Systems engineer working the night shift near Southwark, noticed something stranger than a blackout. An old analog receiver in his office began emitting a rhythmic signal that modern devices couldn't detect, leading him to Greenwich Observatory, where a mysterious metallic device had appeared on the prime meridian itself. As government officials surrounded it, the device activated and displayed a chilling message. System reset initiated. Temporal correction required, revealing that London was not under attack, but under judgment by time itself. A woman believed dead quantum physicist Dr. Mara Ellison burst into the chamber claiming she had built the device and that the blackout was a protective shield against a temporal ripple caused by someone altering a major event in the past. Unless corrected within 72 hours, the expanding fracture in reality would erase London entirely. Realizing the signal uniquely responded to him, Ethan learned he had become synchronized with the unstable timeline. And as mechanical clocks began ticking faster, and the air itself shimmered with distortion, he understood that saving the city would require the impossible traveling back through time to undo the change before history corrected itself by wiping London from existence. As the 72-hour countdown began, Ethan and Dr. Mara Ellison were rushed into a sealed chamber beneath Greenwich Observatory, where the mysterious device unfolded into a lattice of rotating metallic rings that hummed with contained energy, revealing that 3 years earlier, Mara had led a classified experiment, attempting to map gravitational anomalies in spacetime, only to discover evidence that someone had already interfered with a pivotal historical event tied to London's survival. When her team tried to trace the distortion, a shadow organization embedded within global intelligence agencies shut the project down, labeling it a threat to national security. And the experiment seemingly killed her, but in truth it hurled her briefly outside linear time, where she witnessed fragments of alternate Londons, one drowned beneath rising seas, one burning under aerial bombardment that never officially happened, and one erased entirely into white emptiness. Now the device had activated because the ripple had reached critical expansion, and the spiral pattern across the city marked points where temporal stress was strongest, all converging on a single altered moment decades in the past involving a covert, technological breakthrough that was never meant to exist. Ethan, uniquely synchronized, due to being the first to register the anomaly at the exact second of activation, was biologically phased just enough to survive temporal displacement, making him the only viable anchor for a return jump. As armed officials debated the risks, security feeds running on isolated, analog backups captured evidence that they were being watched by unknown operatives already infiltrating government buildings, confirming Mara's fear that the same shadow network that sabotaged her experiment was preparing to control the reset rather than prevent it. With reality beginning to glitch, streetlights flickering into outdated designs, newspaper headlines briefly rewriting themselves, and the Thames reflecting skylines that didn't match the present, Ethan made the choice to step into the rotating rings beside Mara, knowing that if they failed to locate and reverse the altered event within the shrinking correction window, London would not explode or burn, but simply vanish, rewritten out of existence as if it had never stood on the banks of the river at all. The jump did not feel like movement, but like being unraveled and rewoven at once. And when Ethan's vision stabilized, he found himself standing in London. Decades earlier, beneath a gray sky thick with industrial haze, the skyline subtly wrong, fewer glass towers, more cranes. A city mid-transformation, while Mara staggered beside him, breath shallow but determined, explaining that they had arrived within days of the altered event. A classified research breakthrough hidden inside a private technology firm that had secretly developed a prototype quantum synchronization engine years before it was publicly possible. According to the original timeline, the project had failed quietly and been buried. But in this version, someone had intervened, ensuring its success and accelerating technological evolution in ways that destabilized space-time itself. As they moved through crowded streets, filled with analog billboards and early smartphones, Ethan felt waves of temporal distortion ripple through passing traffic faces, briefly flickering into older or younger versions, reflections lagging a second behind reality proof that the fracture was worsening. Breaking into the firm's Riverside laboratory under cover of night, they discovered evidence of manipulation, schematics annotated with symbols matching those on the Greenwich device, surveillance footage showing a hooded operative guiding researchers toward a critical modification, and financial records tied to a shell network that mirrored the shadow organization still hunting them in the present. Before they could sabotage the experiment, armed agents stormed the facility, revealing that the organization had tracked the temporal jump and intended not to stop the correction but to harness it. Believing a controlled reset could rewrite geopolitical power in their favor, in the chaos, Mara accessed the core engine and realized the horrifying truths. The altered breakthrough was not the original cause, but a baited pivot point, meaning the real change lay further back, hidden deeper in history. And unless they traced the ripple to its true origin, sabotaging this moment would only create another unstable branch. As alarms blared and gunfire echoed through corridors, vibrating with unstable energy, Ethan made a split-second decision to overload the prototype, plunging the building into darkness and buying them seconds to escape through a maintenance tunnel. Knowing that their mission had just grown far more dangerous. They were not merely correcting a mistake, but chasing an intelligence capable of rewriting time itself. And with every jump, they risked becoming anomalies that the timeline would eventually erase. The overload of the prototype engine tore a hole through the laboratory and through reality itself. And as Ethan and Mara burst from the collapsing building into the cold night air, the sky above London fractured like cracked glass, revealing flickers of other eras layered faintly behind the present. Victorian smokestacks rising through modern skyscrapers. Wartime searchlights cutting across digital billboards until gravity seemed to twist sideways and drag them into another violent temporal plunge. They landed this time in 1940, amid the chaos of the Blitz. Sirens wailing and bombs tearing fire through the East End. And Mara realized with dawning horror that the Shadow Organization was anchoring its manipulations around pivotal survival points in London's history, moments when the city nearly fell, but endured testing which alteration would produce. The most controllable future. Amid collapsing brick and ash-filled skies, Ethan glimpsed a familiar symbol painted discreetly on a military supply crate, confirming the organization's reach extended far deeper than modern intelligence. Someone here had nudged a decision, redirected a shipment, preserved a scientist who originally should have died in the bombing, setting off a chain reaction decades later. As incendiary blasts illuminated terrified civilians rushing into underground shelters, Ethan and Mara traced the anomaly to a commandeered warehouse, where a covert meeting was underway between a high-ranking wartime official and a figure wearing the same hooded insignia from the lab footage, proof that the enemy was not bound to one era, but operating across multiple historical fault lines. Realizing they were chasing an adversary that existed almost outside time, Mara concluded that the true origin of the fracture must predate even this war, likely tied to a foundational event that defined London's global power, and that every jump was drawing them closer to the architect behind the resets. But before they could retreat, armed agents emerged from the shadows of 1940 itself, soldiers who clearly did not belong to that era, revealing that the organization had perfected limited temporal deployment. In the chaos of falling debris and cross-era gunfire, Ethan seized a portable field transmitter from one of the agents, discovering coordinates burned into its interface that pointed to a final, older date, one that made Mara's face go pale when she saw it, 1666. The year of the Great Fire of London, suggesting that the city's survival had been engineered long before modern memory, and that if the fire's outcome were subtly altered, everything built afterward could shift just enough to destabilize the present. As flames from both 1940 bombs and glimpses of 1666, infernos seemed to merge in the trembling sky. Ethan understood that the battle was no longer about preventing erasure, but about confronting whoever first learned how to bend catastrophe into control, and that the next jump might not just reveal the enemy, It might trap them in the very moment. London was meant to burn. The jump into 1666 felt heavier than the others, as if time itself resisted their intrusion, and when Ethan and Mara emerged coughing into smoke-choked air, London was already burning timber houses collapsing into narrow streets. Asterisk.